right, thank you and welcome to the Finance Committee regular meeting Tuesday, December 5th at 2:30 p.m. We're going to go ahead and call the committee meeting to order. Do we have any public comments? There's no one present and no one online, so any comments from the committee?
No, thank you.
All right, very good. Fraud risk discussion, Ty.
We have nothing to report.
That's good news. Very good. In your current road transmission line funding.
So currently, we are working with Cal Muni putting together the presentation for the rating agency, Standards & Poor's. We just finished up the pro forma, so now we're incorporating it into the presentation. We anticipate or plan on meeting with S&P to go over that presentation on January 4th.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I think.
All right. Item 5, groundwater authority imported water costs. Who wants to take that on?
I'll take that on. As I reported in the last meeting, requested yet another meeting and had a lengthy discussion with the Groundwater Authority, and their legal got back to me last week and said that they can't eat and discuss costs for some unknown reason. I just got a call from a gentleman that has a company that does costs for a living. We may be engaging with them at some point in the future.
Okay, so the Groundwater Authority legal counsel told you that they could not meet to discuss costs, but they did not give you a reason for that. Is that correct?
I believe the reason they stated was they feel that for some reason they feel that like costs of like, what would it cost to purchase water, or what it would cost to operate the pipeline are somehow tied up in the litigation, and that somehow we would use these discussions on costs against them in the litigation. That seems to be their fear. That's at least the rationale they provide.
Okay, so we are not, to my knowledge, involved directly in litigation with the Groundwater Authority. So are they expecting us to be in litigation with the Groundwater Authority in a manner that addresses this importation information? Anybody heard anything like that? All right, so it's just thin soup. All right, thank you. Dan?
I understand where they're coming from, but fact remains, before we start putting serious money into this, well, maybe it's past time we're already past that, but we need to find out what the costs are, and them not being willing to discuss it doesn't do us any good. And so for the benefit of our ratepayers, we need to keep pushing on them. And I know you are, but we obviously need those numbers. There's no point in even talking to them about this project until we get some reasonable numbers, or realistic numbers, regardless if they're high or low. We've got to get real numbers. And the fact that they don't want to talk about it doesn't help anything.
Yeah, and I will say that the consulting firm I spent several hours talking with, they were, nothing is universal, but they said generally, when you're looking at multi-agency projects such as the stuff that we're doing for the groundwater, that typically you develop costs and compare alternatives based on cost first before you go down the path of design and NEPA and CEQA, and so they were a little bit surprised at the fact that costs weren't sort of laid out in much greater detail first, particularly cost to our customers and how that's going to be distributed. So it's just one data point from a consulting company.
Mm. Well, the high-speed rail comes to mind. It
does.
Seriously, it's just, one thing after another, and now it sounds like the environmental people are getting on the bandwagon and trying to, at least in that, it was the EIR that came out, seems to me that the environmentalists had a significant number of problems with the plan that they were pushing for the environmental review.
Are you talking about for the pipeline?
Yeah, the pipeline.
I'm not aware. I mean, I would assume that, entities like the Sierra Club and people who are worried about tortoises and Mojave ground squirrel, I'm sure those people will have significant concerns over, the route and the impact and how the powers run and lots of things like that, for sure.
I assure you, having some understanding of how one of those organizations operates, they're keeping a very close watch on this project. And when the project starts to move into the, goes from vaporware to funded and starting, they will make their voices heard. Absolutely, they will. So they've put the cart before the horse, if that is, if I can reinterpret what your consultant said about it. And that sounds about like what I've decided they've done, because they haven't even figured out where they're going to get the water, where they're going to put the water when it gets here. The amount of water that they're promising to import at that time probably will be more water than the water district can use. So what are they going to do with the excess? If the water district can't or won't take it, are they going to re-inject it in the ground? And they won't address that either. You would think that the staff at the Groundwater Authority, by this stage in the game, should have presented the Groundwater Authority Board of Directors with detailed information on the cost. Instead, they're asking the Board of Directors of the Groundwater Authority to make decisions based on incomplete information when better information should be and could be made available. And the funny thing about not talking to the water district about these detailed information is that the water district has a representative on the board of directors, so we would hear it anyways. So there's something going on, and I think it is at the staff level at the Groundwater Authority.
Yeah, and I do want to make one comment, that I have had some discussions with the Groundwater Authority, and so when we talk about the amount of water being imported, there are various options, and one of the options is if Searles Valley Minerals stays in the valley, some of that water that I guess would come to the pipeline would come to us, a couple thousand acre feet would come to us, and then Searles Valley Minerals would pull that out of the aquifer at some other place, and the Groundwater Authority has stated that through some mechanism that I'm not sure I fully understand, that Searles Valley Minerals would pay the Groundwater Authority, and they believe that we have incorrectly stated that we would be responsible to pay for 100% of the water that came to us. And I believe there are scenarios where, at least in theory, we would accept water which would get pushed through our system that somehow some other entity would pay for, such as Searles Valley Minerals. I'm not sure how all those contractual relationships would work. It does seem a little odd. Seems like, and these are reasons why I think that maybe having some sort of injection or percolation project where that water, instead of coming to us to absorb the amount that some other entity is pumping out of the ground, is taken and paid for. It would be better if they just put it in the aquifer in a place perhaps where there were wells with lowering water levels to help those wells, and then let somebody else pump it out somewhere else, and then they can have some other arrangement to pay for it other than us. So they have asked that I sort of add a little bit of detail in these meetings about those different options. Now, Searles Valley Minerals could go away. That's another option. And then, then you start to get into some really odd situations, such as what happens to these small pumpers if, how do you spread costs evenly in that case? Because now you have all kinds of people with small wells that are pumping. Are they really going to contribute to paying for this? If so, how? Especially if we're taking water to offset their use. And I don't know how all that would work. And I think that's integral to these sort of discussions about cost, which is sort of what are the mechanisms and how does that really work? So to be clear, I don't have a good picture or a good way of describing it, but I certainly wanted to respond to the Groundwater Authority's request to at least have further discussions about the complexities and the fact that maybe we wouldn't be required to pay for 100% of what came to us, but I'm still not sure how those other entities would pay.
Right. So Searles Valley Minerals has stated that they can't afford to pay the $2,000+ per acre foot replenishment fee. The water costs coming from the pipeline through from Mojave is going to cost several times that per acre foot. And if they can't afford the $2,100 an acre foot fee, they sure won't be able to afford the $6,000 or $8,000 an acre foot fee, which we can't fully fix because we don't have a good idea about what it's really going to cost to build and finance the pipe and do the processing. There's a problem at the Groundwater Authority, and it is that the staff is concerned about something. They won't even tell the board of directors what the board of directors needs to know in order to make a reasonable decision. And the board of directors at the GA needs to put a stop to that and dig into what's really going on.
Yeah, so I will say this, like, when you talk about costs, the replenishment fee, of course, is primarily to pay for the purchase of water. The purchase of water would be very expensive. I'm going to guess somewhere, the estimates I've seen range above 50 million. So that fee, in all likelihood, would not go away anytime soon, because they would still have to have some means to pay for the water, and I don't believe they've banked enough money I don't believe they have $50 million in the bank, or anywhere near that at this point in time. And then on top of that, in our discussions with ABEX, they did say that, sort of the standard rate is $700 an acre foot for water just delivered, but that wouldn't be the rate we would pay because we're outside their service area, and so there would have to be a special negotiation. So that would be more, and then you have to add on top, somebody's gonna have to pay for the operation and maintenance of the pipeline. And so there are some pretty significant costs out there. Those are some of the ones that we know of. And that becomes more complex when you start to think about like how water gets delivered. If the state water has this scale of how they, you get 50% this year and you get 0% next year and 100% the year after that, which I had discussions with ABEX, which I thought indicated that they weren't really willing to bank that water, so we got sort of a similar amount every year. We might get a lot one year and very little the next year, and I've had discussions with the GA that say that's not true, that the ABEC will bank it, but we don't know the answers to those questions either. So there is really a lot of uncertainty and unknown stuff out there that is really deserving of discussions between the water district and the Groundwater Authority with respect to this particular project, if it were to go forward. And that is, given some of the things that recent data we've released, those might become more if than when.
Right?
Yeah. David brought up an interesting thing just a minute ago, is that it's interesting, or would be curious, I'm curious, how much the other board members know. That is, are we the only one who is not privileged to have the real information? Or does nobody on the board know? And if nobody on the board knows, how and why are they going forward with a project that they don't understand the cost of? That is truly bothersome. And another comment is, our water usage has been going down for the last, probably the last 10 or 12 years, but even more so the last 3 or 4 years. And if indeed we are able to comply with the new state conservation laws, we'll be going down for the next maybe 8 or 10 years in order to comply with those new state laws. So we definitely aren't going to need as much water as we have in the past. So, you put everything together and you kind of wonder what's really the big picture. And it's going to be interesting to see what's happening with regard to the GSP update and what they're going to put in the GSP update. I don't expect to see a whole lot in the 2022 annual report. So 2023 annual report, I guess, is what's going to be due in April, because it's more of a how goes it based upon the projects in the old or current GSP. But the revised GSP is going to be very interesting, because they're going to have to look at the new science that's available.
And I will comment on your question about the board itself, the GA board itself. having run into what I consider, I've exhausted the avenues I feel I have available to work with the staff, to talk about cost. So I think at the next board meeting, I will try to tactfully ask the board directly, like, is there a better way that we can communicate on things that are not related to the litigation, and simply pose it to the board that we are really trying our best to open lines of communication where they can be had, and that's difficult with the staff. And does the board have either direction and/or, the GA board have either directions or suggestions for their staff to help us start to communicate better? Because it's, the sort of back and forth emails that sometimes we do are not really productive, and they're not getting us anywhere. And the inability to meet in person, and in some cases to discuss what seem, at least from our perspective, to be relatively critical and simple topics, is something that we need to really work hard on making better. Let's just say our relationship with them and the way we communicate. So hopefully the board itself will start to recognize that, we just need to find ways where we can communicate productively.
Right.
And you're going to do this in a public venue?
I'll make that question at the board meeting itself.
Okay,
GA
great.
board meeting next week.
Yeah, and I think we need to do more of that, quite frankly, is more open. The more transparent we can be, as far as I'm concerned, the better off we all are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I did request, I actually requested to the GA staff if there was the opportunity for me to sit down with the board in their board in closed session, but that would not be appropriate with the Brown Act for me to sit with their board in closed session and discuss how to better communicate. So that really only leaves me the option to do it in public, and I want to try to be as tactful as possible. And I don't want to offend anybody on the board. I know that they're public servants, as are you guys, and we want to see if, hopefully they can help their staff move in a direction towards better communication with us.
Excellent.
All right, very good. Any other comments? Item number 6, electric vehicle mandate.
Okay, so starting January 1st of 2024, the state has mandated that 50% of our new vehicle purchases have to be zero-emission vehicles.
By what date?
Starting January 1st of 2024.
That's coming right up.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is going to be primarily, go ahead and talk about which vehicles we think will be the most, clearly the administrative vehicles will be.
Right.
Is it on a vehicle is all vehicles considered equal? So the SUV is equal to the giant work truck?
No, so there will be vehicle categories that are exempt from this. One being emergency vehicles, which many of our vehicles can be considered that based on having to respond after hours. Backup vehicles, those that are driven less than 1,000 miles a year. I think we only have one or two of those. Daily usage exemptions, if there's not vehicles that can meet the daily either hours working or mileage working, then there's exemptions for that. Infrastructure delay exemptions. We did talk to our rep from SCE today to see how we can go about finding out if the grid here can even handle that. Because it's not just going to affect us, it's going to affect the city as well, the county, the school districts. Those will all fall under that.
The school district, which has just acquired a bunch of all-electric buses.
Right. And mutual aid assistance. So we are in a mutual aid, what is it, like a coalition with some other districts and cities, correct?
Yeah, we have the mutual aid agreement with Cyril's, CSD we respond to, and the Navy as soon as we get the pipeline fixed.
And those can be powered by gasoline or diesel?
25% of the total, under the new regulations, those 25% can be internal combustion engines.
25% of that list of exemptions?
Of the mutual aid, if we use that exemption, there's,
Oh, the mutual aid one, okay.
right, there's many different exemptions here. A lot of it's gonna take a lot of paperwork and reporting but Yeah, that's what we're looking at. There will be some that we just will not be able to get an exemption for, such as our admin car. I believe Jason's vehicle as well, probably engineering to some degree. We'll have to look at that and see if it qualifies for exemptions. I'm not sure that those would.
Okay.
But most of our heavy fleet, we'll probably be able to work some exemption out for the time being until they change the rules again.
So I think there's some things for the board to consider, and I think we should do our homework on purchasing, you know, if we do have to purchase some of these electric vehicles, getting those that are made in America benefit to us, getting those that are more reliable, we need to be a little bit of homework done. On the smaller truck fleets, the half-ton type trucks, which are the most likely the ones that will end up being service trucks, you know, we probably need to do our homework on which of the various options out there are actually proving to be somewhat reliable. And, you know, so over time, we're gonna have to look at those things, and certainly, you know, those are things to consider about how we get there. And, you know, it's not, this mandate's not gonna go away, and, you know, we're just gonna have to figure it out, and we wanna do it smartly.
May I ask, have you by any chance discussed any of this with the city, like Ron Strand, you know, how they're going about doing it, if they've got any good ideas to minimize the impact to us?
Next time I meet with Ron, which is, I probably should do that next week or two here, I will bring that up. I think it would be, I think you bring up some good points, you know, make sure we all have the same types of charging stations so we can interchange. If they have to charge here, we have to charge there, all that kind of, you know, because there are various different, I guess, charging type connections, I guess you would say, I don't know, the coupling, whatever you want to call it. So we should probably try to standardize such things as that, and that way we can also share common types of infrastructure, so maintenance costs on the infrastructure can be reduced as well. So, yeah, so good suggestion.
Okay, so I'll try to keep it to half an hour or less.
Appreciate it.
This demand from the state is attempting to create a false market signal, to make it look like electric vehicles are popular and to incentivize manufacturers to make them. Side note, Ford is having a rethink on their electric pickup truck because it has a horrible range and virtually no towing capacity. Furthermore, manufacturers around the country are asking the current federal administration to back off on their demands because the market isn't expanding as the federal government intended it to, and basically nobody wants an electric. That's not true. Many people are resistant to using electric vehicles, which weigh several tons more than regular vehicles, wear the tires out much faster, and are extremely difficult in extreme climates. They shorten the battery life if it's too hot, and they shorten the battery life if it's too cold. And the replacement cost for batteries in these vehicles is something, in the regular civilian vehicles are $14,000 in many cases. And people aren't aware of that. For the commercial vehicles, it's even more ridiculous, the replacement cost. And if you get a minor fender bender and you have to have repairs, it can cost you an order of magnitude more than a fender bender repair for a combustion vehicle, because they have to go through and make sure the electrical system and battery hasn't been damaged. So it is absolutely a disaster to ask people to force people to buy these electrical vehicles. If they were better than internal combustion engine vehicles, people would be flocking to them, but they are not. Finally, in a disaster, if the power grid is down, how are we going to recharge all of our vehicles that are supposed to be out there making sure the water lines are working? Well, we'll have to use diesel generators to charge them, won't we? Or not move at all. This is a very poor mandate, and it's very poorly thought out. And I'm going to stop talking before I get calls from the state. Are any other comments on the mandate? I know I am, and I'll tell you how I know.
I'm curious, George, have you or anybody else on the staff talked with anybody from, what is it, the SDA, the Special Districts Association or agency, about are they still are they doing anything to fight the California mandate to make it more palatable, to, push it out or do anything like that?
I'm certainly aware that there are a lot of those discussions going on, and I have not engaged with them, and I believe even at the Aqua Conference, they had a session on that, but I was involved in a different session I felt was more important, but
Oh, yeah,
we will certainly,
can't be everywhere.
it can't be everywhere, and so, yes, we will start to look at that, and, things that we might do is get one of our staff, like I said, I think as we start to look at this, I think we're gonna get some of our smart staff personnel to kind of look into what the options are, and, I'm sure that they will come up with, the very best possible solution. I suggested they buy me a Tesla Plaid, and nobody thought that was a good idea, and I have to agree with them, that was more of a joke, but, there are, I'm sure we will be able to ultimately find, solutions that will work for us.
We need solutions and a strategy for going forward. What do we focus on first? How do we minimize the number of electrical vehicles we have to purchase? Because in the current economic circumstances of the nation and in the state of California in particular, reckless expensive mandates such as this one are going to cause small utilities around the state to either go deeply into debt or to go bankrupt.
Well, and this might require us to relook at our replacement policy about how often we replace vehicles or what repairs what really drives us to replace the vehicles. I know that there are lots of agencies out there who have taken to, for other reasons, not this particular mandate, to keeping older vehicles and sending them in for what they call 0-mile rebuilds, where they get a full rebuild from the ground up.
Okay?
Those are things that are done as well.
Hearing that, I will leave this in your capable hands. Any other electrical vehicle mandate comments? Hearing none, let's move to financial statements, please.
Okay, through November, we have revenues of just under 6.5 million, which is actually 540,000 below budget. Decreased usage.
Total or for the month?
Through November.
Up through, so it's a total, so
It's a
right,
total,
thank
yeah.
you.
On the expenditure side, we're at 7 million, which is 479,000 below budget. So our net's a negative 520,000, which is pretty close to where we budgeted to be at this point. As for a net, we're about 60,000 under. Now, keep in mind, I'll caveat this, that we have paid in excess of about $800,000 in GA fees based on current pumping versus the schedule we were paying against. So we will have that credit coming due for January. It'll probably cover 3 or 4 months of next year's GA fees. So that expenditure number will go down.
Okay.
We built an $800,000 credit. As well as we'll have a reduced schedule from what we had budgeted based on current pumping. So instead of I think we had about 3 million budgeted for replenishment fee, it's gonna be around 2.5 million for next year. Capital expenditures of 850,000, debt service principal of just under $500,000, and then you can see the total to date that we have paid in GSA fees and replenishment fees for a grant.
In the budget, the delta was right at 600,000. And I noticed for last month, which was that November? This is
October.
October, okay. I guess in my mind, October is sort of a medium month, not a high usage, not a low usage necessarily. But we went from $600,000 different from budget to 350. So we made up about $250,000. Can you shed some light on?
Yeah, we've made up, this isn't a straight line revenue number. We base the budget, the monthly budgets based on historical months. So we have performed pretty good for December or November versus October. We've made up some ground.
Okay. So in other words, we actually did pump more and sell more in October than we would normally?
I believe we were pretty Yeah,
Okay, okay. Well, we just need to keep track of our water pumping and.
yeah, we track that every
But
month.
obviously, the $350,000 difference is a lot better than the 600, so.
Right.
Not that I'm suggesting anybody pump additional water. I ought to make sure everybody knows that. Anybody who's listening in, anyway.
Yeah.
Do we have any other comments on that particular page? Then go ahead, proceed, Ty.
Okay, the accounts payable disbursement. We've got the first page, nothing out of the ordinary there. On page 2, we have the usual Aqua JPIA insurance payment of 65,000. We have our CalPERS unrealized. Anyways, that's part of the unfunded liability for our CalPERS at 24,608. Ferguson Waterworks, 23,706 for various parts for the water system. We paid our taxes to Inyo County for the property up there, total of 21,500. The groundwater pumping fee, 55,000. We got Krager and Stewart at 33,000. Murphy and Everett's at 64,000. Ramble at 28,000. SCE for 55,000 and Santa Fe Water Systems for 24,000. Just to note, Santa Fe, Wind Water Works is closing up shop locally. So I sent Joe and Robert over to Bakersfield to talk with Ferguson. Ferguson supplies many of the same parts and they already do deliveries to the base. So I believe that'll probably be our new primary vendor for water supply parts.
Okay.
Yeah, we already use Core and Main, but they seem to be a little more expensive. Yeah, out of Lancaster.
Other questions on this page?
I would make a quick comment. For a long time, we have been, due to some litigation stuff, unable to sort of discuss why certain charges such as Ramble and what they were actually doing. And it's worth mentioning that this week we released some new science and new data. Ramble was a part of that, part of a technical working group, and they have done some amazing work. They have flown a helicopter over the entire basin, mapped it out using these fancy instruments they have. They have come up with estimates of groundwater storage of somewhere around 40 million acre feet, which is a significant difference than what was previously thought. And recharge to the basin of something like 13,400 feet is their estimate. We feel that these costs were well justified in really getting the very best science that is available and review of all the data and a lot of new science, and well worth the cost of what we paid for that, in the long-term benefits to the Indian Wells Valley, itself. So I wanted to explain, things that we maybe previously couldn't explain, what they were actually doing. So if the public is listening or interested, there are some news articles that are being released, and you can see the wonderful work that those really talented scientists and engineers have done.
That was money well spent, for sure. It's going to be interesting to see what the GA does with the new information.
Yes.
Okay, carry on, Ty.
All right, the third page, not a lot there. Fourth page, nothing out of the usual. So let's go to the fifth page. We have Golden Meter Service, 27,000. That is our system-wide, large diameter meter testing that we do once a year. Under that, 288,000 for our replenishment payment. We have McMurtry, Hartsock, Worth, and St. Lawrence for 60,000, and another invoice for Ramble for 31,000.
Okay. Questions on this page, comments? Okay, please proceed.
And then on the last page, we have $30,000 to Ferguson for parts, and then Tiger Direct, 27,000. That's an old invoice that they never sent us for, is that for our server? Okay. For our
They
server.
must have lots of money if they can forget the $30,000.
I guess so.
Oh, they're just filtering through the books then. All right.
So,
Okay, anything else?
just need a recommendation on that.
Do you, I think we should.
Yes, I'd be happy to recommend that we accept the accounts payable.
Okay, I agree. Let's, we'll let the board know that pass that on to the board for the general meeting next week. Any other comments on accounts? Oh, accounts payable. Any, account payable disbursements?
That's what we
We
just did.
covered
Yep.
two of those things. No wonder I'm confused. All right. Thank you, Ty. Appreciate it. Future agenda items, anyone? How to keep Director St. Amand from going on about electric vehicles every time he hears the topic? That might be, no, we'll work that issue personally. All right, then nothing. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to adjourn the meeting at 3:06 PM. Thank you for your time and attention.
You need to clean out your drawer accordingly.